Hi, I'm Andrew K. Wallace. Picture a trading desk in 2026, not in Manhattan this time, but overlooking a map of arable land layered with weather volatility, water rights, fertilizer access, and logistics corridors. The screens don't show stock tickers, they show soil quality indices, yield variance, and political stability scores. Capital is moving, but it's not chasing tech multiples or office towers anymore. It's moving into fields, quietly, methodically. That's the shift most people haven't fully processed yet. When investment giants like BlackRock expand exposure to farmland, and when tech founders accumulate acreage at a scale that rivals small nations, it's tempting to ask moral questions. Motive, intent, power. Those are understandable instincts, but they miss the more important layer: incentives. Food has re-entered the balance sheet as a strategic asset. For decades, food was treated as a solved problem in developed economies. Supply chains were global, inputs were cheap, yields rose steadily. Inflation was tame. The system appeared resilient. That appearance was misleading. It depended on stable energy prices, predictable weather, open trade routes, and political coordination. Those conditions no longer hold consistently. When systems lose redundancy, capital seeks control. Farmland offers something increasingly rare: tangible production, inflation protection, and most importantly, optionality in a world where optionality is shrinking. You can't offshore soil, you can't print rain, you can't substitute calories at scale without consequences. Food sits beneath every other economic activity, which makes it foundational. This is why smart money reframed agriculture from a low-margin commodity business into infrastructure. Let me make this concrete. Imagine a farmer in the Midwest renewing an operating loan. The interest rate is higher, the terms are tighter, inputs cost more, fertilizer prices swing with geopolitics, water access is regulated more closely. At the same time, a large institutional buyer offers to purchase the land outright, lease it back, and assume some of the volatility. From the farmer's perspective, it's risk relief. From the institution's perspective, it's consolidation. This isn't predatory, it's structural. When volatility rises, balance sheets with scale win. Smaller operators trade independence for stability. Over time, ownership concentrates. Not because of a master plan, but because the system rewards resilience over tradition. Here's the quiet part. Food isn't just consumption. It's leverage. Countries understand this. During supply shocks, export restrictions appear overnight, prices spike, politics follow. Food insecurity destabilizes faster than currency swings. That's why governments subsidize agriculture and protect domestic production. Now apply the same logic to capital allocators. If food is security, then farmland is strategic real estate. Ask yourself a simple question. In a world of climate variance, demographic pressure, and fragmented trade, which asset class offers predictable demand across every scenario? The answer isn't software, it's calories. This reframes another common belief, that agriculture is backward, low-tech, a relic. In reality, modern farmland is data-intensive: sensors, genomics, precision irrigation, yield optimization. The capital required to compete has risen sharply. That favors large pools of money. And large pools of money behave differently. They hedge weather risk across continents. They negotiate input contracts globally. They influence logistics. Over time, they don't just own land. They shape supply chains. That's the pivot point, when ownership transitions into coordination. You don't need to control every acre to influence outcomes. You need enough scale to matter at the margin. Enough to smooth volatility for yourself, while volatility increases for everyone else. This is where ordinary life begins to intersect with abstract strategy. Grocery prices don't spike uniformly anymore. They become more responsive to policy, weather alerts, and logistics constraints. Certain products disappear temporarily, substitutes appear, prices reset higher and rarely come back down. From the consumer's perspective, it feels like inflation. From the system's perspective, it's repricing risk. Food as the new currency of power doesn't mean hoarding. It means prioritization, contracts, forward planning, preferred access. In tight systems, allocation replaces abundance. Notice how discussions around food increasingly include resilience, sustainability, and security. These are not slogans, they're risk categories. They justify long-term control over productive land and inputs. Now, it's important to be precise. Firms like BlackRock don't farm, they allocate capital. They respond to signals. Pension funds need assets that perform when traditional correlations break. Farmland offers low correlation, steady yields, and inflation linkage. The math works. Tech moguls see something slightly different. Long-term population growth, biological limits, the convergence of technology and agriculture. Again, incentives, not ideology. The outcome, however, is the same: concentration. There's a threshold here too. When enough farmland is owned or influenced by institutional capital, pricing dynamics change. Small shocks propagate faster. Local shortages become regional. Policy responses become reactive rather than preventive. This doesn't mean famine. It means control surfaces emerge. Points where decisions about planting, distribution, and pricing have outsized impact. And once those surfaces exist, power accumulates around them. The public debate often gets stuck on personalities, names, headlines. That's a distraction. The real story is that food has been repriced as a strategic asset class, and the old assumption that markets alone will keep it cheap and abundant is outdated. Markets allocate efficiently under stable conditions. We no longer live in stable conditions. Watch how capital behaves during stress. It doesn't chase yield, it secures supply, energy, data, food. These are the pillars. Everything else is derivative. If you want to understand where power is moving, follow what's being quietly bought, not loudly debated. And there's another layer. Digital finance and food systems are converging. Smart contracts, tokenized commodities, predictive logistics. When finance and food share infrastructure, allocation becomes faster, more precise, and less visible. This isn't sinister, it's efficient. But efficiency reduces slack. And slack is where independence lives. Most people won't notice this shift directly. They'll notice it indirectly, in higher grocery bills, in fewer choices, in seasonal volatility that feels sharper than it used to, in policies framed as temporary that linger. By the time the pattern is obvious, ownership structures are set. This is how civilizations have always worked. Control the inputs, and you shape the outcomes. Not absolutely, but probabilistically. Enough to matter. So when you hear that farmland is being accumulated, don't ask who is doing it. Ask why the incentives now point there. The answer tells you more about the future than any press release. Power doesn't announce itself with force. It embeds itself in infrastructure, in contracts, in supply chains that look boring until they aren't. And for those who aren't prepared, the realization comes slowly. When food is no longer just something you buy, but something allocated by systems you don't see, governed by priorities you didn't set. That's not a collapse, it's a realignment. One where control becomes quiet, scarcity becomes managed, and survival belongs to those who anticipated the shift before it reached the checkout line.